Today we're going to look at Practice Test 7 of the Math No Calculator section, only the Heart of Algebra questions, and there are 8 of them. Number 1. X plus y is equal to 75. The equation above relates the number of minutes x Maria spends running each day, and the number of minutes y she spends biking each day. In the equation, what does the number 75 represent? Well, if x represents the number of minutes running, and y represents the number of minutes biking, we are adding the two together here. We're finding a sum, or a total, which is why C is the correct answer. For choice A, if Maria went biking at all, that would not be the correct equation. And for choice B, if Maria went running at all, that would not be the correct equation. And for choice D, this is not a comparison of how often she bikes and runs. It's the total, or the sum. Number 3. X is equal to y minus 3, and x divided by 2 plus 2y is equal to 6. Which ordered pair xy satisfies the system of equations shown above? There's more than one technique to solve this problem. I might use substitution, however, because the x and the y in the first equation both have a coefficient of 1. I could solve it for either, however x is already by itself. So I'm going to take y minus 3, which is what x is equal to, and I'm going to replace that in the other equation. So I'm going to plug it in like this. Y minus 3 divided by 2 plus 2y is equal to 6. This denominator of 2 is screwing things up across the board. So if I wanted to cancel that out, I could just multiply both sides by 2. So I take 2 times here, 2 times this, and 2 times this. This cancels out. I have y minus 3. This is doubled, and I have 4y. And over here I have 12. If I combine like terms, I have 5y minus 3 is equal to 12. When I add 3 to both sides, 5y is equal to 15. And when I divide both sides by 5, I get y is equal to 3. Looking at my answer choice, there's only one that has a 3 for y, so B is the best choice. Number 6. A company that makes wildlife videos purchases camera equipment for $32,400. The equipment depreciates in value at a constant rate for 12 years, after which it is considered to have no monetary value. How much is the camera equipment worth 4 years after it is purchased? The key vocabulary for this problem is that it depreciates, which means that the value goes down, and that it depreciates at a constant rate, which means we are looking at a linear equation and not an exponential one. We know in the beginning, say when our x value is 0, our y coordinate, or our cost of the equipment, value of the equipment, is going to be $32,400. And after 12 years, we know that our value is going to be 0. If I take these two coordinates and I use the change of slope formula, if I use my change in slope formula, where I take 0 minus 32,400, and I divide this by 12 minus 0, I end up taking 32,400 and dividing this by 12. So one trick to make this division go a little bit easier is I could cut both of these in half first. So I have 16,200 divided by 6. I could do the same thing again, and I have 8,100 divided by 3. So here I can use the change in slope formula. So I take 0 minus 32,400, and I divide this by 12 minus 0. So I have negative 32,400 divided by 12. Now if you have a calculator, that's great. Remember, this is on the no calculators section of the test though. So we're going to use some tricks for division. Instead of dividing this large number by 12, I can divide them both by 2. And I get 16,200 divided by 6. I'm just taking half of 32 is 16 and half of 4 is 2. Half of 12 is 6. I can do the same thing again, and I get 8,100 divided by 3. Now you might remember that 81 is the same thing as 27 times 3. So I get that 27, and I have my two zeros. It's not the final answer though. $2,700 is the next piece of the puzzle, because that's how much the equipment depreciates in value each year. However, they wanted to know how much is the equipment worth 4 years after it's purchased. So what we do then is we start with the $32,400 and we subtract from this the average or rate of depreciation per year multiplied by 4. Since I'm trying to do this without a calculator, I might consider it as 2 times 2 times 2,700. Because it's easier to figure out that 27 times 2 is 54. And we'll leave those zeros. And if I double that again, that gives me 108. And we'll leave the zeros. So I'm subtracting 10,800. We can do that vertically. We borrow from the 1 to get 14 minus 8 is 6. This stays 1, and this becomes a 2. There's our final answer, 21,600. C.
Number 8. Ken is working this summer as part of a crew on a farm. He earned $8 per hour for the first 10 hours he worked this week. Because of his performance, his crew leader raised his salary to $10 per hour for the rest of the week. Ken saves 90% of his earnings from each week. What is the least number of hours he must work the rest of the week to save at least $270 for the week? So the first part of this problem shows that he earned $8 per hour, and he did this for 10 hours. So we can take $8 per hour, and we can multiply this by 10 hours. And this gives us $80. If we want to save 90% of this, well, when we convert percent to a decimal, it becomes 0.9. So how do you do 80 times 0.9? There's a trick that we can divide one of these numbers by 10 and multiply the other by 10. So here on the left we'll divide by 10, and here on the right we'll multiply by 10. This gives us 8, and this gives us 9. Is that a little bit easier of a problem to solve? So $72 is saved from the initial 10 hours. For the duration of the week, or the rest of the week, he's earning $10 per hour. And if you take $10 per hour and you multiply that by 90% times 0.9, you just get $9 per hour. So instead of calculating how much he earns and then how much he saves, we can instead say that he saves $9 per hour. The final piece of the puzzle is this at least $270 for the week. So we know he is saving $9 per hour, and we can use X for hour. And we know that he has saved 72 so far from the first 10 hours. This has to be, it could be equal to 270 or it could be greater than 270. So that's the correct direction of the inequality. So to solve this, we want to get X by itself. We subtract 72 from both sides. We're left with 9X on the left, the rest cancels out, is greater than or equal to 198. We divide both sides by 9. Cancels out on the left, and this is actually 22. C. Number 9. Marissa needs to hire at least 10 staff members for an upcoming project. The staff members will be made up of junior directors, who will be paid $640 per week, and senior directors, who will be paid $880 per week. Her budget for paying the staff members is no more than $9,700 per week. She must hire at least 3 junior directors and at least 1 senior director. Which of the following systems of inequalities represents the conditions described if X is the number of junior directors and Y is the number of senior directors? So if we talk money first, we know that it's going to be $640 per junior, which is X, and we'll add that to $880 per senior, which is Y, and at most $9,700, which means it could be less or it could be equal to $9,700. And if we take a look at our inequalities, the problem is with the direction of the inequality. So in fact, we can rule out A and C right off the bat. If we start to write down some of the other inequalities, she must hire at least 3 junior directors. At least means it could be 3 or it could be more. So your X value is either going to be greater than or equal to 3. And in fact, we see that's why D is incorrect. We don't have to keep going. We could, but we don't have to keep going. We can recognize that B is the correct answer. Number 14. A shipping service restricts the dimensions of the boxes it will ship for a certain type of service. The restriction states that for boxes shaped like rectangular prisms, the sum of the perimeter of the base of the box and the height of the box cannot exceed 130 inches. The perimeter of the base is determined using the width and length of the box. If a box has a height of 60 inches and its length is 2.5 times the width, which inequality shows the allowable width x in inches of the box? So let's try to draw this out and think about what they're saying. We know there's a rectangular prism, so just think of a three-dimensional box that's longer than it is tall. And we know the height, they give us the height is 60 inches, so there's our height here. And this red part would represent the base. It's a rectangle, and if I put it back to two dimensions, it looks like this. It has a length and a width. It tells us the proportion between the two, that the length is 2.5 times the width. It doesn't tell us what those values are, just the proportion. So I'm going to choose x for the width and 2.5 times x for the length. When we multiply this, or when we add together this perimeter and we add it to the height, it cannot exceed 130. So what exactly are we adding? Well, we're adding the width plus the width, so that's x plus x, and then we're adding the length plus the length, so plus 2.5x plus 2.5x plus this 60. If I simplify terms, I have 7x plus 60, and I know that it is either going to be equal to 130 or less than 130. So if I solve this, I can subtract 60 from both sides. I get 7x is less than or equal to 70. And when I divide both sides by 7, I get x is less than or equal to 10. Notice this tells me the right side of my inequality, because the lowest possible value here is 0, since we're talking about a length. Number 16. If 2x plus 8 is equal to 16, what is the value of x plus 4? One approach would be to solve the original equation for x and plug it in. However, what if we divide everything in this equation by 2? That gives us x plus 4 is equal to 8. It's a shortcut. We don't have to solve for x and plug it back in. Number 19. The graph of a line in the xy plane passes through the point 1, 4 and crosses the x-axis at the point 2, 0. The line crosses the y-axis at the point 0, b. What is the value of b? Algebraically, I can solve this using the slope formula, y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. If I plug in these values, I get 0 minus 4 divided by 2 minus 1. Or in other words, negative 4 over 1. If I plug this in with one of my equations, let's say I choose 2, 0, I get that y is equal to m, negative 4, times x, which is 2, plus b. Notice I took 2, I plugged it in for x, 0, I plugged it in for y. If I solve this, I get 0 is equal to negative 8 plus b, and I add 8 to both sides, and I get that 8 is equal to b. That's our final answer.